Okay, so we have been discussing about beach ball diagram, focal plane mechanism, or fault plane solutions, which actually are representations for um, earthquakes. Okay? What type of faults essentially created those earthquakes is represented by the beach ball diagrams. And then we said these are the corresponding beach ball diagrams. This is for strike slip fault, then this is for normal fault, and this is for thrust fault. So today our aim will be is to understand how these diagrams are created. Okay, and these are nothing but stereographic projections of the fault planes. Okay, so that's why I asked you to learn about the stereographic projection or refresh yourself with stereographic projection. Right? So we said that a plane in a stereographic projection is represented by a line, which is generally parallel to a you draw it parallel to a great circle, then it can come anywhere. Of course, you remember how we have essentially drawn a particular plane on a stereographic projection. We talked about it before. And similarly, we said that a line is represented by a point in a stereographic projection. So our idea will be essentially to use the stereographic projection method to plot, to create a beach ball diagram, which is representation of the fault system, which is responsible for an earthquake. Okay. Then we also defined something called pitch or rake, and that is essentially, we also talked about it before. That is what is the angle between the strike of the fault plane, and if there is any lineament on the fault plane, the angle between that lineament and the strike of the fault plane is called the pitch or the rake of that particular line. Okay. Now, let me put things. This is where we will start today's lecture on. Whatever I've just said is part of the pre-recorded video I have explained before. Okay. So there are two pictures shown here. Okay, and I'll try to explain in a very simple language what it essentially means. Okay, so the first picture that you are observing here, you know, these two are essentially the focus of the earthquake or the hypocenter of the earthquake. So this is where actually the elastic collision is happening. So if I just compare it with this particular diagram, this is my fault plane, of course, and this is where is the origin of the earthquake. This is where essentially uh, the elastic energy is being released, right? Now, say for example, this particular earthquake is created due to compression, fundamentally due to compression. Compression means you know about compression. Compression means, you know, sorry, am I doing it wrong? Just a moment. Right. So this is created by compression. I said it right. Okay. And then whatever, say for example, here are my seismometers. Okay, here are my seismometers. So the first motion which is received, hang on for a moment, is an important. Just a moment, guys. Hello. नहीं अभी नहीं क्लास में हूँ मैं. Sorry guys, so this is a focus which is created by a compression, the earthquake created by compression, and then these are the seismometers. So this is seismometer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Okay, so the first motion, whatever is received, the first ground motion that it will measure is also compressional. Okay, similarly, if this earthquake is created by dilation, dilation means extension, okay? Extension or dilation, we can say. The first motion, whatever will be essentially seen by these seismometers, will be dilational as well. So now, if I look at it, this looks like, if I just look at it from a plan view, as if there is this focus, and then there is all sorts of compressional first motion from its seismometers if they're kind of in 360 degrees. And this is the representation of the same in the plan view, okay, for a dilational moment. Now, we will look into different fault system and see how it works. So, for example, I'm first looking at a strike slip fault. Right? I'm first looking at a strike slip fault. Now, strike slip fault means, suppose this is my plate A or block A, and this is plate B. They are sliding past each other. Now, what sort of motion is that? As you can see, I taught you. This is a what sort of motion, guys? Can you tell me whether it is dextral or sinistral?
Sir, sinistral.
Sinistral, simply because it's anti-clockwise movement, right? If I put a ball. Now, say for example, think that I have rocks here, right? This is not like empty. I also have rocks here. Now, if this strike slip motion is in place, what I will observe that, like this part of the rock will be kind of pushed by these rocks. This part of the rock will be pushed by these rocks, and here I will observe compression. Similarly, this part of the rock will be pushed by this part of the rock, will be pushed by these rocks, and here also I will feel compression. On the other hand, this part, this segment of the rock, the blue segment, let me just put some other color. Now, this blue segment of the rock, kind of getting away from this rock, so hence here I will observe dilation. The first motion will be dilation. Here also, with the same logic, I will observe dilation. Okay. Now, let's say let me just take a a blank slide, and then let me explain that to you. Draw something for you. Now, suppose this is my ground surface. Okay, this is my ground surface. That means I can denote that with some trees, maybe. Here is my ground surface. And the earthquake has happened here, down, So here is my fault. And with the same example, we can draw a sinistral strike slip. So the trace of the fault will be somewhat somewhere here, right? I'm just vertically projecting the fault on this surface. Okay. Now we don't see this. We don't see this trace, right? What we have though are seismometers. Now let's just put different. Okay, what we have those seismometers, all around it. Okay. Now I am observing the first motion on these seismometers, and I observe this sort of pattern. What I observe, so the compressional first motion we are denoting with a solid circle, and the dilational first motions we are denoting with a hollow circle. Okay, so what I am observing, I'm observing that these seismometers have seen, maybe more seismometers here. Seismometers have seen compressional stuff. These seismometers have seen dilational thing. These seismometers have seen compressional first motion, and these seismometers have seen dilational. So now my job will be to do a very simple thing, that I will try to divide them into coordinates. Okay, so I can simply divide, like there is a coordinate here which actually divides these compression from dilation. Also another line which is kind of perpendicular. I cannot. I mean, it's a projection, so it's 90-degree. Okay, so I can simply divide them into it. So if I and then so what I am observing, what I am drawing, I am drawing. So these two lines are nothing but the projection of two planes, the projection of two vertical planes, right? Now, the projection of two vertical planes, suppose, this is north, this is south, this is east, this is west, just to make our life easier, if I just try to put that in a stereographic projection, how would I put it? A north-south vertical plane will look like this, and an east-west vertical plane will look like this. And then this was my compression coordinate. This is my dilation coordinate. This is again my compressional coordinate. Sorry, my apologies. This is dilational again. This is dilational coordinate, and this is compressional coordinate, right? That's how we can simply translate this information into a stereonet. Now, the convention is to actually the dilational coordinate to keep empty, and the compressional coordinates are to completely fill it up. Okay. Now, you see, the north-south running plane is actually my fault plane, right? If I look at the subsurface, the north-south running plane is actually my fault plane. But the east-west running plane is actually not my fault plane. It's a plane which is conjugate or complementary to the to my actual fault plane. Okay, so this is the north-south plane is my actual fault plane, and the east-west plane is my auxiliary plane. That's how we define it. So now, what essentially I want to mean that I have not seen this fault. I don't have any way to actually visualize this fault. What I am observing is only the ground surface, and in the ground surface, I have at different distances, I have these seismometers. Right now, I'm just observing their first motion, whether they're compressional or they're dilational. Okay, and then I am dividing them into coordinates. Okay, I'm just dividing them into coordinates. When I'm dividing them into coordinates, the lines with which I'm dividing them into coordinates would represent the fault planes. One of them is the actual fault plane, the other one is the auxiliary fault plane. Okay, so if I if I'm so I don't know whether it's a strike slip motion that has happened beneath. I don't know whether it is a normal motion that has happened beneath. Neither I know whether it is a thrust fault that has happened beneath. What I am observing is only the first motion on the seismometers, right? And then I divide them into coordinates, plot those lines as like planes into a stereographic projection, and that tells me that if I observe this sort of diagram, this sort of beach ball diagram, I will infer that this earthquake has caused by a strike slip fault. Now the strike slip fault could have an orientation. It could be north-south or it could be east-west. Now tell me if you have understood this. If not, then I am happy to explain again, because we are going to get into a bit more complicated stuff with normal fault and reverse fault.
I didn't understand the compressional and the so why is it happening at halfway on both sides?
Okay, right. That you did not understand. Okay, so I'll try to explain once more. I tried that to explain once more. So what happens in a strike slip fault? If I look at this strike slip fault, this is block A, this is block B. Okay, so block B has moved along this arrow, and block A has moved along this side, right? Now, of course, this is, I mean, the surrounding is not empty, right? So there is rock here, right? There is rock everywhere. So think about that. Think about that you are trying to push a block against this rock. Okay? And of course, what would happen if I try to push this block against this rock? I will find compression here. Okay? But as a result, as a drag, because I'm trying to push it, and here what I'm observing, that I'm taking it away from this rock, from the surrounding rock. Okay, so I will observe a dilation. With the same logic, I will observe, extension here. I will observe compression. I have actually drawn it little too far. This was a better diagram. happen. See in this picture. So here, because this is kind of getting collided with it's being pushed against the wall rock, and here it is going away from the wall rock. Here it is, uh, here in this place, here it is being pushed against the wall rock, and here it is going away from the wall rock. Here it is being pushed against the wall rock, and here it is going away from the wall rock. Hence, I am observing compression here, and hence I am observing dilation here. If you do a small experiment with the clay block that you used to make toys with in your childhood, you should be able to demonstrate that as well. Is that clear for you?
Yes, sir. So it is similar to shearing.
Yes, shearing is happening here. Na? This is shear.
Yes, sir.
This is shearing only, but this is more like compression. This is compression, as if this block is pushing it. Yeah, here this block is pushing it because it's trying to come closer to the wall rock.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is that clear, everyone? Is this part also clear where I talked about how this information is translated? Okay, I assume that it is clear. You don't ask me question. Okay, so this is exactly, so this is the example that I was just talking about. So this is your ground surface, right? And these are all your seismometers. So what I would do, I would essentially, I can divide it into, so this is one plane that I can draw, and this is another plane that I can draw. That would divide my compressional and extensional stuff in both sides. Okay. By the way, wherever these two meet, this is my epicenter. Wherever these two planes meet is my epicenter. And then, of course, this is one of them will be my actual fault plane. The other one will be my auxiliary fault plane. But we don't know which one is what. But we can at least say that one of the fault plane, either the fault plane is northeast, southwest trending, or the fault is northwest, southeast trending. That much I can tell. But as these two lines are perpendicular to each other and they are like straight lines, I kind of know that this is because of a strike slip fault. Because the strike slip faults are always vertical. We talked about it. I don't know if you remember it or not. Strike slip faults are always vertical. Hence, you will observe them to be lines, I mean straight lines on a stereographic projection. Okay? The same thing. Now let's look at a normal fault. So this is a normal fault. Now what is this block A called? Guys, what is this block A called with respect to the fault terminology? We talked about it.
Hanging
What is
wall.
fault A called?
Hanging wall.
Hanging wall. Very good. What is fault B then? Footwall, right? And this is the fault plane. Right? Why is it hanging wall? Because it is in the direction of the, this is in the direction of the dip, right? And in a normal fault, hanging wall moves down. You remember all these things. Right? So now let's see. Now we have all these seismometers on the, ground. Okay. So suppose, of course, so you can imagine that as if this part of the footwall is moving up and the hanging wall is moving down like this, according to these black arrows that I have just pointed. Okay. Now here is my wall rock, and here is also my wall rock. So now this part is kind of pushed against the wall rock. Hence, I am observing in the seismometer the first motions being compressional. So is true here. Okay. But what is happening in between? In between, I am observing dilation. Okay. In between, I am observing dilation. Okay. Now, if I observe this type of pattern, not important, let's say. This is not important. Okay, let me just put a empty slide and then explain this part. Now here is my ground surface. Okay, and these are the location of all the seismometers. Okay, for your convenience, I have just made them equally spaced, but in practice they are not. Okay. Now what I am observing, you know, these are my extensional stuff. This is the pattern I have observed. Sorry, this is the pattern I have observed. And then let's use another color. And these are my, sorry. These are my compressional stuff. Okay. Now, can I divide them with straight lines? Perhaps not. We cannot divide them with straight lines. Okay. So what I have to invoke now? I have to invoke planes which are carved. Okay. So with the same logic, if I want to put that in a stereo net, how would they look like? They would look like okay, where both sides are compressional. Yeah, and in between, so this is compression, and this is dilation. Okay. And this speaks for the picture that I just talked about. So if I observe this pattern, I know this is due to a normal fault. The earthquake is due to a normal fault. Okay. The earthquake is due to a normal fault. Okay. And this is one plane, this is another plane. One of them is the main fault plane, the other one is my auxiliary fault plane. Okay. Now I don't know which one is main fault, which one is auxiliary fault. So now if I observe a beach ball diagram where both sides are compressional, in between is is extensional. It looks like this. I know this is the fault in which is responsible for creating this earthquake is a normal fault. Okay? Because of this logic. The in between stuff is dilational and both sides we have compression. Is that clear? Huh?
Sir, in StereoNet, the empty part represents dilation.
The empty part represents dilation, yes.
Okay, sir.
Okay. That's what I said now. You remember that when I talked about this. That's what these are the solid circles are compressions. What I said conventionally, then you feel it in the stereo net, and the empty circles are dilations, right? So in the stereo net, you leave them blank. Okay, or with that logic, it's convention only. Is it
Okay,
clear or
sir.
not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. अभी
So
हम देखेंगे.
making the stereo net, do we
हाँ,
mark the which is the fault, actual fault, and then which is the auxiliary plane?
we don't know. We just don't know from only one data. We don't know. Maybe if we have some other supporting evidence, we might know.
Okay.
You know, maybe we know in that area there is no. Say for example, if I look at this one, okay. So suppose I have two planes, northeast, southwest, and northwest, southeast, right? We don't know which one is auxiliary, which one is main. Now I know the area what I am looking at. We don't have any northwest, southeast faults. We know because of the surface expressions or any other thing. Okay. So then the most likely explanation will be northeast, southwest. But from that is that evidence is coming from some other source, not from this diagram. This diagram cannot tell you which one is main fault, which one is auxiliary fault. Okay, so you
Okay.
have to take help of other data.
Yes.
All right. Here you can only say that this is not important. So this is the normal fault, as you can see. Now, of course, so this is one plane, this is another plane. So here they have denoted, maybe they have got some other evidences that this is my fault plane, and this is my auxiliary plane. Okay. Now let us look at a thrust, which is not given here. We can do it by ourselves. Or shall we, leave this one for you to try out how the thrust stuff will look like? I think it's a better idea than I do it, that you practice one for yourself. Okay, how would conceptually, how would a thrust beach ball diagram? I mean, I will show you how it looks like. This is exactly opposite to the exactly opposite to the normal fault. But then, what is the logic of having the computational stuff in between and the dilational stuff on the both sides? That I leave it up to you to understand. Okay, so if you have understood normal fault, what I want you to do is to draw kind of a 3D diagram like I have drawn, like is drawn here. Is draw a 3D diagram for a thrust and see if you can reproduce a beach ball diagram which is resembling like this. So in between I have compression, and on the either side we have dilation. Okay, shall you try? Would you try that, guys? I'm sure if you try that, it will be your concept will be clearer. So if you can't solve it, then let me know. Then I'll do it again tomorrow. But otherwise, I'll just leave it for you to try. Draw a conceptual diagram of a thrust. From here, you can start and say which part would you put as compression and which part would you put as extension. Okay. Now, the main fault plane, although you cannot just talk about it uh, from the stereo net itself, from the beach ball diagram itself, but from other sources. From the main fault plane is actually demarcated with a solid line, and the auxiliary fault plane is demarcated with a dashed line. Okay, so that is essentially the convention. Okay, so if you find such diagrams, you should be able to understand that you should be able to say that what sort of So what is the deep and the strike of the fault planes? Of course, that you can say. You can talk about whether it is a shallow dipping, whether it is gently dipping, whether it is steeply dipping, and many other informations around it. Whether the fault was normal fault, whether fault was thrust fault, and so on and so forth. Okay, I'll show you some of the examples of beach ball diagrams, and now you can tell me what sort of fault we are looking at. So, what is this one? Tell me, what is this one? What sort of, if I see a beach ball diagram like this, what is this 20?
Sir, thrust fault.
So
Reverse
this is the thrust fault. How about these?
strike slip.
Strike slip.
They are actually oblique slip. What is an oblique slip fault? That you have to know a little bit of structural geology, so don't be too much bothered about it. But they are called oblique slip. Oblique slip means that is a mix of thrust and strike slip. Okay, we will discuss, or it can be also a mix of normal and strike slip. Okay, but we will discuss them after your structural geology class. For the time being, don't be too much bothered about them. Now here they are pretty clear. So this is, these are all thrust faults. Actually, you can see uh, pure deep slip fault thrusting. So it's pure deep slip fault normal. Okay, and they are all oblique slip. Now these are all thrust and strike slip mixed, and these are normal and strike slip mixed. But what exactly an oblique slip fault is, we will talk about later on. Now it's a mixture between strike slip and a deep slip fault. Deep slip faults are either normal fault or thrust faults, but it's kind of a mixture. We will discuss them later on. All right. So this is what I wanted to talk about on fault plane solution. Do you have any question? If not, then I will move to the next thing.
So the purpose of this is just to identify what type of geologic boundary it is.
So what type of fault it is? First of all, what type of fault it is, and then you can calculate the deep strike of the faults. Okay, whether the fault is steeply dipping, whether the fault is gently dipping, so on and so forth. Okay, it's all about characterizing the faults, which you cannot see
Okay, sir.
because from the top you don't know what type of fault it is. You don't see it, right? So you analyze your seismometer signals, and then you talk about what sort of fault it is, whether it has created because of a normal fault, whether it was created because of a thrust fault or a strike slip fault. If it is a normal fault, what is the deep of the fault? What is the strike of the fault? If it is a thrust fault, what is the deep of the fault, or what is the strike of the fault? If it is a strike slip fault, you know the deep it's 90 degree. Then what is the strike of the fault? You know. So you have to characterize the faults which is responsible for the earthquake that you are feeling at the surface.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, you don't see them, right? It's happening 30 kilometers below.
Yes,
How
sir.
would you see them? So this is the way by you can actually uh, make some inference what sort of faults they are. Okay. Anything else? If not, let's go with the next thing. Okay. Before we do that, let me just take another empty slide here and just introduce what we are talking about. So the next thing we are going to look at is something called reflection seismology. Okay. This is also called exploration seismology. So whatever we have been discussing so far in terms of earthquakes, okay, and related elastic wave propagation, right? That's what we have been discussing. Now, earthquakes are natural phenomena. You don't create that collision. There is a faulting due to tectonic stresses, okay, and that faulting essentially releases the energy which you measure in with your seismometers, right? That's all you do. So here the source is natural. In earthquake seismology, the basic difference is your source is anthropogenic or man-made. The basic principles are still the same, but the source is anthropogenic or man-made. Now, because earthquakes are natural, they are uncontrolled. You don't know whether there will be an earthquake below Bhopal, whether at which depth the earthquake will be, whether the earthquake will be of what magnitude. You can make some guesses, but it's completely uncontrolled. You cannot control it. Okay? So if something is not controlled, if something is uncontrolled, it's very difficult to use the data, maybe if for your particular purposes. So if you want to use this beautiful phenomena of elastic wave propagation through the earth, and your source is uncontrolled, maybe in some cases you find out very good information about the structure of the earth, but being it uncontrolled, it might not be optimum, right? It might not be optimum solution because you essentially don't know where the source is. I mean, at what depth the source will create a collision and so on and so forth. But in case of exploration seismology, then hence what you do is essentially you create a blast at a particular point wherever you want. It can be at any depth, and then you know exactly what sort of, I mean, what is the energy that you could release, at what depth you are creating that blast, and then as you have created the blast, there will be propagation of elastic wave. So these are the wave fronts that I am drawing, right? Now, what we also know that the internal structure of the earth is not homogeneous, right? So there are layers in them. So let us say we have three layers where the first one has a density of rho 1, the second one has a density of rho 2, the third one has a density of rho 3. And here I am going to introduce one very important term, what we call as acoustic impedance. Okay. So now, because they are different layers in their mechanical properties, the elastic wave will essentially travel with different velocities through different layers. I say this is layer A, this is layer B, this is layer C. So, say for example, at layer A, the elastic wave is propagating with a velocity of v1. Here it is at v with v2, v3. Okay. So the product of the velocity of the elastic wave multiplied, sorry, the product between the velocity of the elastic wave and its density is called acoustic impedance. So V1 rho 1 or V2 rho 2 or V3 rho 3 is called acoustic impedance. Okay. Now let us compare this with optics a little bit. Okay. Optical waves. And these experiments that you have done in your school days and you are very much familiar with from your day-to-day experiences as well. So, for example, I have a medium, I have a refractive index mu1 and refractive index mu2 between two mediums, and then I have a ray which is incident on um, the incident on the interface between mu1 and mu2. What would happen to this ray? Can you tell me? So some part of the ray, what would happen to it?
Sir, it
Some
would.
part of it will be reflected, right? Isn't it?
Yes,
Hello?
sir. Yes,
Some
sir.
part of it will be reflected, some part of it will be refracted, right? So you know about Snell's law. This is I, this is R, sin I by sin R is equals to what? Anyway, you refresh yourself, but you know about these things that when an optical ray essentially transmits through different refractive indices, medias with different refractive indices, they reflect or refract. So would happen for the aqueous. So would happen for the elastic waves as well. Okay. So say for example, I'm drawing a ray path here. So ray path is nothing but the, ray path is nothing but the line perpendicular to the wavefront. We talked about it before, right? And then what would happen? Part of it will be reflected. It would exactly follow the similar principles like the optical radars. Here, the reflection and refraction is controlled by the refractive index of the medium. Okay, but here it is controlled by the acoustic impedance. Okay, and this is the basic principle that we are going to use in exploration seismology. How we are going to discuss in detail with the slide pack. Is this clear, guys? Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we are going to use these basic principles. Now let's go to the slide pack. Where is it? Let me just put it in a PDF mode. Okay. So this is the basic exploration workflow in the oil and gas industry. So the reflection seismic technology is mostly used in the oil and gas field. Okay, that is where their that is where their application is most. Okay? This reflection seismology technique. So, how do you explore a oil and gas field? Okay. So, with your geological information, first you identify some opportunities. Okay. Say, for example, someone told you that from your geological knowledge that the west coast of India is petroliferous. That means it has oil and gas in the subsurface. Then what do you do? You divide that area into certain sizable blocks which you can work out. So then you capture prime areas. You know, maybe within the west coast of India, maybe the Gulf of Kutch is most prolific. Okay, so I kind of narrow down the area, and on that area, then I will acquire my reflection seismic data. I will acquire my reflection seismic data. So what does that mean? What is acquisition of reflection seismic data mean? That I will essentially, in a very designed way, which we will discuss in a start discussing tomorrow. That we will start, shooting some. We'll create some blasts, and with some seismometers, we will record the signals, whatever is being reflected back from the subsurface lithological boundaries. Okay, so we will acquire the data with the controlled seismic explorations, and then we will process the data, of course, and then we will interpret the data. So in tomorrow, maybe we need another class. What we are going to discuss about these three aspects. Okay, how the seismic data, reflection seismic data or exploration seismic data is acquired, and then how it is processed, and then finally how it is interpreted. Okay. Then once it is interpreted, you assess your prospect, okay, whether there is petroliferous or not. Then you do a economic analysis. Economic analysis means even if it is petroliferous, even if it is very small, if the oil and gas, whatever is there, is not economic to be taken out, okay, that sort of decision you make. Then you drill wells in them. The first type of wells that you drill are called wildcat wells. Wildcat wells are the wells that you drill at the very beginning. If this is a success, you know, then you develop the field. If it is a failure, then you kind of drop that prospect or abandon that field. Okay? This is more or less your total exploration workflow that is followed by oil and gas companies. And in this particular area, geophysics has a extremely important role. Okay, geophysics has extremely important role. So both in terms of well logging, which I will send pre-recorded lecture for you, and in terms of seismic data acquisition, processing, and interpretation, which we are going to discuss in the next class. Okay. So with that background, I stop today's class. If you have a question, I'm happy to answer. Any question? No? Okay. All right, then we will continue with the exploration seismology tomorrow. Thank you.